Thing. March 3, 2020. Translated by Treasure. Life is a non-material structure with spirituality at its essence and whose manifestations are varied and ever-changing, from microbial bacteria to insects, from plants and animals to humans, from goblins, devils, monsters, and ghosts to gods, Buddhas, celestials, and saints, and from some mysterious cosmic objects to the ancestor of Buddha, the greatest creator. They are all lives. Both the material world and the non-material world are the spaces for lives' activities. Lives exist in fire, the frozen world, stone, and in the deep blue sea. Some lives are tangible. Lots of them are invisible. Some live in hell, some live on a planet or celestial body, and some live in heaven. Lives can be defined as being born from eggs, wombs, changes of humidity, or by transformation or separation, but in the final analysis, they have all been created. All of their ancestors were created, their programs were set, and all of their offspring were born according to their programs. Those born from eggs and wombs can reproduce naturally as long as their environments, especially temperature and humidity, are appropriate. Those born from humidity or transformation will come out automatically in large numbers, such as plants and parasitic lice on human bodies. But when the environments change, they go extinct quickly. Lives are hierarchical, including low-level, intermediate-level, and high-level ones. The lower its level is, the greater its quantity is. The higher its level is, the less its quantity is. Some are tangible, some are invisible. The greater its energy level is, the less visible it is. The smaller its energy is, the more tangible it is. Tangible lives are uneasy to change, but intangible ones are able to change at will. Tangible lives consist of physical bodies and spiritual entities. Their physical bodies carry their spiritual entities, while the latter master the former. Just as with running cars, the cars are as bodies and the people driving them are their spiritual entities. Lives born from eggs and wombs never die because their so-called deaths only kill their physical carriers, but their spiritual entities always leave their bodies to move on to their next journeys, such as in humans. Human deaths only mean that human bodies have fulfilled their missions and have returned to dust. Their real lives will either ascend to heaven, return to the mortal world, reincarnate as animals or livestock, or fall into hell. Lives born from humidity or transformations will perish thoroughly once they die. Humans represent intermediate lives of all lives, which are tangible lives. Some life forms are superior to humans, such as the ancestor of Buddha, the greatest creator, such as gods, Buddhas, celestials, devils, goblins, spirits. Of course, there are many lives lower than humans, such as wild and domestic animals, plants, microbes, and so on. Life forms can change, but whether they do so or not depend on their non-material structures. As their structures change, their forms change. If their structures remain unchanged, then so do their forms. This raises a very serious consideration for us. By being careless, human life structures can degrade to those of animals such as dogs and pigs, but by being careful, those same human life structures can elevate to those of goblins, spirits, celestial beings, or Buddhas. Once born into this mortal world, humans change every day. How one changes depends on their consciousness, and what one eventually changes into depends on the state of their immediate, pre-death consciousness. If one possesses a celestial's consciousness at that moment, then they will go to the fairyland world. A human consciousness, they will return to the human world. In an animal's consciousness, they will fall to the animal world. Human lives are not easy to attain, and their survival is hard. We need to rank the study and exploration of life's mysteries as our highest priority. Those who regard money, power, status, reputation, and beauty as their highest priorities cannot unseal their spiritual perception and will remain ignorant and confused forever. It is only by unsealing one's spiritual perception that they can understand the mysteries of life, and only by understanding those mysteries can one transcend to a higher life space. There are 8 mysteries on life, and those whose spiritual perceptions have been unsealed need to explore and seek. Note: definition of life and life. Life is a non-material structure with spiritual sense. Life is 1 plus 1 1. Life is composed of 2 parts: the intangible spiritual entity and the tangible body. The intangible spiritual entity mainly refers to the thought, consciousness, spirit, and soul, and etc. The tangible body mainly refers to the full-flesh body where the soul is attached. Life. Life is just a journey of life in this world. The traveler is issued a single-entry visa with the traveling dates specified. The origin of life. Xiefeng. August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. Definition of life. Before we can discuss the origin of life, we must understand first what it is, or we will not be able to explore its origin. Today, although the scientists who are discussing life may not be as plentiful as the hairs on an ox, at least their number is very large. When we enter words such as life, life study, origin of life, and life exploration into any search engine, we will find a wide field of life exploration articles from which we can gain an idea of the various research theories and achievements discussed by life scientists. Unfortunately, all life scientists just make fusses over their interpretations of it because none of them understand its real essence. Only Christopher Langton, an artificial life theorist at the United States Los Alamos National Laboratory, in his publication, Artificial Life, initiated some introductory wisdom about the life exploration area. Some of his opinions broke through the limitations of traditional thinking patterns and took a small step toward understanding the cognition of life. For example, the essence of life lies not in its substance, but in its form. Then what on earth is life? Life is a non-material structure with spirituality. All substances are not life, but they can be carriers of life. As with a person's watch, car, house, and clothes, none of these are part of the person, but appendages and adornments of their life, and we cannot learn about them by simply relying on their appendages and adornments, nor can we know them by their age, appearance, height, weight, or other characteristics because all of these just show the material structure of their life carrier. It is very hard to understand non-material structures because they depend on our spiritual perceptions completely. They require extraordinarily sensitive spiritual perception to be seen. If one's spiritual perception is dull, it would be imperceptible in any way, but this does not mean that there is no way to understand it. I will give an example and hope it will inspire you to draw an analogy. As I send a fax from Harare, Zimbabwe, to my friend in Washington, D.C., his fax machine receives it almost immediately. The contents that he receives are nearly identical to what I had sent. My handwriting, the shape of the characters, and the line spacing are unaltered by his fax machine. However, the original copy is still with me and I can toss it into a waste paper basket as rubbish because it has accomplished its mission and has conveyed its message, soul, to my friend in America. Let us analyze what has happened. The origin copy never left my room, but my friend received the fax instantly, and only the paper and ink, the carrier of the information, has changed. How do you explain this? The fax machine used the photoelectric principle to transfer the information into audio signals and sent them through an electric cable to a communications central office which transmitted them to a satellite uplink transmitter. A satellite received and retransmitted them. Then the information was received by a satellite downlink receiver, sent to another central office, and finally sent it through another electric cable to my friend's fax machine which restored the information from audio signals into words and images. In this way, the soul of my original copy was sent to my friend. Here, we mainly focused on the audio signals, which are a kind of materials rather than non-material. However, they have their own characteristic structures which differ from other audio signals, such as their frequency, wavelength. If the structure has consciousness, then it will be a non-material one. When microscopic particle tends to be infinitesimal, it will not exist or move in the form of particles, and it will become a string, or even a superstring. Superstring is a non-material structure. In this sense, the essence of life lies in non-material structures, rather than the carriers of life material. The essence of life is formless. Who can tell the form, color, or weight of life? When referring to humans, dogs, vegetation, insects, and bacteria as life, we are literally talking about the expressions of their life forms rather than their essences of life. The forms of life are exceedingly strange and various, but the essence of life is unitary. Life has spirituality. Life cannot exist without it. Living people can walk, talk, breathe, eat, drink, and blink their eyes, but only until they die and their bodies lose their spirituality. Can we call a cadaver with no spirituality a human? Of course not. Thus, flesh is life when it has spirituality, but it is just a cadaver after it loses it. A stone can be called a life when it has spirituality, but it is only an aggregate of material elements after it loses it. A tree can be called a life when it has spirituality, but it is only a piece of wood after it loses it. A car can be called a life when it has spirituality, but it is only a heap of waste iron after it loses it. A statue can be called a life when it has spirituality, but it is only a heap of dried mud, plaster, or metal after it loses it. Any material object might be a life, or may only be an aggregate of material elements, depending on whether it has spirituality at the particular temporal time and space. Life is a non-material structure rather than a material one. Every material has a structure, even if it is only a molecule, an atom, a particle, or a string. As long as it is material, it will have a structure or particulate sequence. However, the structure of a material does not imply that it has life. A cup may have a structure, but it is not a life unless it has spirituality. What are non-material structures? I ranked the non-material briefly when I talked about the negative universe in describing the universe. They include time, space, thinking, consciousness, mind, spirit, beliefs, order, spell, dharma, and soul. These are all non-material. Do non-material entities have structures? Yes, they do. Spells used in witchcraft are structures. Prayers in Christianity and Islam are structures. Lections read by Buddhists from their hearts and mouths have structures. Everybody's thinking are structures. The order of the universe, the law of physical movements, and progressive developments through time are structures too. All non-material forms have their own given structures, but this does not mean that all non-materials are lives. Only when the non-material structure has spirituality is it a life. Is a vegetative person a life or not? No, they are not a life until the non-material structure with spirituality returns to their flesh. Is a person who is sleeping and dreaming a life or not? No, they are not a life until their consciousness returns to their flesh. It may be hard to accept this. Obviously, the people are still breathing. Their hearts are still beating. Their bodies are still warm. How can you say that they are not lives? Indeed, that is exactly what I am saying. If a car's engine is working with its headlights shining, maintaining a normal temperature, water circulating, and fuel burning, can we then say that the car is a life? If a pot of water is boiling on the stove with steam and with the possibility of scalding people, can we say that the pot of water is a life? We see people talk, run, eat, drink, and play in movies or on television. Are they lives? A great river is flowing, running, and crying. Is it a life? The moon moves around the Earth at full speed and moves the Earth's ocean tides. But is the moon a life? Everything in the universe may or may not be a life. Whether it is or not depends on whether it has non-material structure with spirituality at that moment. We just talked about the essence of life, which is the same as the software in a computer. A software program can only perform its function when it enters into a computer's hardware, otherwise its program will not work. It is very hard to understand the essence of life. It sounds as if I am talking about something that is only in my imagination. So let me level down the meaning of life to a lower degree and analyze and interpret it from this presentation of life. Sakyamuni, who possessed Buddha eyes, defined life as born from eggs, wombs, humidity, or by transformation, with or without form, either thoughtful or thoughtless, and neither thoughtful nor thoughtless. And this definition includes all life forms in the universe. The life forms born from eggs, wombs, and humidity can be seen everywhere on the earth, and they are easy to understand. What is life born by transformation? Every life with water, appropriate temperature, humidity, and that is formed naturally, belongs to the category of transformation. The huge numbers of microorganisms and various bacteria are all transformations. The life that can be seen through human eyes refers to the life which has physical forms. Every life that we see in the world is the life that can be seen through human eyes. What life cannot be seen by human eyes? This refers to the life which exists without any physical form, such as the life in heaven, life in the Elysium world, life in Netherworld, life in the frozen and inflamed layers, and so forth. Thoughtful life refers to life with self-consciousness. Thoughtless life refers to life without self-consciousness, such as plants without flowers or fruits, and nearly all gemstones. Either thoughtful or thoughtless life refers to life that appear to lack consciousness, such as the earth, the sea, thunder, wind, clouds, rain, snow, and so on, but actually can have great wisdom. Neither thoughtful nor thoughtless life is superior. That which normal lives regard as 1,000 years is only a moment to super celestial beings and Buddha in supreme life space. There is, however, one superior life which exists on a holographic level only and has no physical form. This is the unique, greatest creator. It would take hundreds of years to comprehensively analyze all the life forms, but I will use humans as an example for which to interpret life. Life is 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. Life consists of two parts, a formless spiritual entity and a tangible object. The formless spiritual entity refers mainly to consciousness, thinking, spirit, inspiration, mind, and mindfulness, which are collectively called the soul. The tangible object refers mainly to the body to which the soul is attached, such as a person's flesh. A person is a life because he has consciousness, thinking, spirit, and some invisible and impalpable psychological activities, as well as a soul-attached body, such as the 5 sense organs and the 7 apertures in the human head, internal organs of body, trunk and limbs, skin and hair, nerve and blood, and so on. If a person is insensitive to burning when they put their hand into boiling water, to the pain of a thorn sticking into their skin, to the coldness of an icehouse, to the flavors of food, to starvation when they have not eaten for too long, to danger, to love and hate, to changing surroundings, or to anxiety and fear, then they are without a soul. Such a person does not exist at all. Although a vegetative person is still a person medically speaking, their souls have left their body and roamed into a space tunnel. Because of the maladjustment of the body, their soul cannot attach to its flesh effectively, and their thinking and consciousness cannot express themselves effectively. If we massage constantly at a certain acupoint of their body or call softly into their ears, we can bring their distant soul back. As the body changes and revives, the unconscious person becomes a normal person with life once again. Once a soul has left its body, that body will lose its vitality of life. As long as a soul stays within a body, that body will never die. Even if you remove a person's heart, drain all their blood, or even decapitate them, their life will still exist and they will not be dead. In the mythic novel, The Legend and the Hero, Prime Minister Bai Gan's heart was removed by Deji. He did not die right away because his consciousness, thinking, and psychosocial activity were still there. That is to say, his soul was still attached to his body so he could still walk and talk, but he breathed out his life immediately when he heard Deji, who disguised herself as a person selling vegetables, say, "Vegetables without hearts can live, but humans without hearts must die." Why? Because Deji's words sealed off his thinking and compelled his soul to leave his body. When the soul left the body, he was dead. An experiment was once conducted on a prisoner who was condemned to death. A guard explained, "You have been sentenced to be executed immediately. You are to bleed to death, and we expect you to cooperate." They tied him onto a bed with his eyes covered and leaving one arm hanging over the side above an empty bucket beneath it. Then, they pretended to cut his wrist with the dull side of a knife, meanwhile dripping water into the bucket beside the bed. The sound of dripping kept pounding in the prisoner's ears. Over tens of minutes, the continuous dripping noise waned gradually, leaving only the ambient room noise in the air. Then the sound of the dripping disappeared completely. With the disappearance of the dripping sound, he was found to be dead. What made the prisoner die? His wrist was not cut and none of his blood had been shed. What caused this death was conventional thinking. I was sentenced to death. My blood all left me. No one can live without blood. Ergo, I must be dead. As a result, death followed very soon. During China's SARS outbreak, the Sohu News Agency reported this story. In order to find out the source of the SARS virus, government agents went to Guangdong to investigate some restaurants and attached a tracking device to one of the animal traders. One time, this animal trader bought lots of snakes from a market to sell to a restaurant. Because they were very familiar with each other, and the animal trader had nothing to do after his transaction was finished, he decided to help the cook to cut the snakes. As he was cleaning himself at the end, one of his fingers was caught by a snake's head. Although his life was not in danger after prompt medical attention, his finger that was bitten by the snake's head became disabled. We are not going to discuss the source of the SARS virus or the finger of the traitor, but our concern is how the dead snake could take revenge and bite the finger of the traitor after it had been dead for many hours. It could still take revenge after its body had stopped functioning because its consciousness and psychological activity still existed within its body. It had not died. This case proves that as long as a soul does not leave its body, even if its body is cut into pieces, its life will still be there. Buddhists consecrate tooth relic of the Buddha. People visiting ancestral graves like to burn incense, kowtow, which are regarded as performing conventional activities to express admiration and grief. Wise people understand that tooth relics of the Buddha are actually the whole body of the Buddha. As with a dressing room mirror that is broken into many pieces, you can still find your reflection in any of them. They burn incense and kowtow to their ancestors because they are afraid that their ancestors' souls might still be attached to their bodies, and that if they stop respecting them, then they will feel guilty from bad consciences and will also be afraid of the spells that their ancestors might cast upon them, the ill retribution from them. A mystery of the Egyptian pyramids is that all those who have been involved with the ancient rulers' tombs, regardless of their methods or motives, as long as they dug the tomb of a pharaoh or disturbed the peace of one, would be punished, usually by sudden death. More than 40 archaeologists had died successively. The curator of the Cairo Museum died suddenly after being involved with an Egyptian burial mound and a mummy. Kammerer achieved success by exploring Tutankhamun's tomb and then died of a rare but serious disease. Archaeologist Emery had examined ancient tombs until he became totally paralyzed and died suddenly. Professor Dormethrin entered the tomb to copy the inscriptions and also met a tragic death. Why did these things happen? Because the pharaoh's souls never left their bodies. Pharaohs believed that they would be brought back to life at the proper time. So they went nowhere and waited and guarded, day and night. If people dared to disturb them at any time, they would punish them. Once encountering a tomb whose soul has not left its body, most tomb robbers will suffer serious illness and die suddenly, while the rest might lose their families at least. Let us view some scenes in many movie stories. At the life and death fighting moment, although some people were killed obviously, they could struggle to fight at a crucial moment and killed their opponents and then died at the same moments. Why? The reason is the same as with the snake's head bite. Cancer, leukocythemia, AIDS, SARS, and other diseases kill people's thinking and consciousnesses first and then kill their bodies. People know that their likelihood of surviving from any of these incurable diseases is very slim once they contract them, so their consciousnesses collapse first. The collapse of their defense line will inevitably lead to overall weakness and a maladjustment of the body, which in turn further strengthens their acceptance of death, and only it awaits them in the end. Some wealthy people like to be examined regularly. They believe that if they diagnose a disease in its early stage while it is still curable, then they will be more able to survive it, but they do not appreciate the danger of this. If their examination report shows a healthy body, then everything is okay. Unfortunately, however, should an incurable disease be discovered, they could be digging their own grave. In fact, people's bodies have self-defenses with disease-fighting functions. Many diseases just come and go. They occur silently and disappear equally silently. Those who simply ignore them often go on with their lives without even knowing about them, but once they are discovered and taken seriously, they tangle their victims relentlessly till the end. There was a case at a Chinese hospital where two patients' examination reports were exchanged accidentally. Sadly, the one who was not too sick snuck into his doctor's office where the case reports were stored and found the wrong case report with his name on it. At the sight of his report, he felt dizzy and chilled instantly, struggled back to his ward, and totally collapsed because his examination report said terminal cancer. Meanwhile, the sister of the patient who actually did suffer from terminal cancer also snuck into the office to check her brother's condition. She was wild with joy when she saw that her brother's report said normal. She took it out happily and brought it to her brother. As soon as he read it, he could suddenly sit up and exclaimed, "These doctors are jerks. They only want my money. Let's go home." He held his sister's hand and left the hospital cheerfully like a healthy man without even checking out. The importance of consciousness, thinking, and psychological activities, souls, are fundamental. They prove that the deaths of living creatures means the death of their souls first of all. The deaths of their fleshes are caused by the deaths of their consciousness, thinking, and psychological activities, which represent exactly their souls. People who die out of shame, fear, or anger are actually killed by their own souls. A shameless person never dies from shame. A courageous one never dies from fear, and a tolerant and broad-minded individual never dies from anger. Seth said, "Physiological symptoms are communications from the inner self which indicate that we are making mental errors of one kind or another, and such is the case. When our consciousness, thinking, and psychological activities are functioning abnormally, our bodies become dysfunctional and maladjusted, which is the reason why so many people need to self-refine." Taoists are second to none when it comes to talking about good health and long life. One who seeks Tao can most easily cast off their worldly involvements and treat their life from a higher level. When their self-refinement makes their consciousness, thinking, and psychological activities realize that as long as there is a soul, there is a life, then they are able to become celestial beings. Buddhists' understanding of life is at a higher realm because they understand that although souls consist of consciousness, thinking, spirit, and psychological activities, there cannot be a life without a physical carrier body, but they can attach themselves to other objects to form other new lives. Souls can go to the Elysium world directly and enjoy the supreme pleasure of life when self-refinement reaches a profound level by ridding themselves of the constraints of normal thinking completely. By supreme self-refinement, I mean self-refinement of consciousness and thinking. The self-refinement which aims towards supernatural power is at a lower level. Eminent Buddhist monks never take supernatural power seriously. However, many things grow in gardens that were never sown. Jesus and Sakyamuni considered how to save all living creatures. Yet in the end, both of them obtained supreme supernatural power. In postscript, I have written, "Unbearable cold, surpass the human world. Infinite day on Balakia Island. Scatter a handful of sand and thousands of trees will appear." The part that says, "scatter a handful of sand and thousands of trees will appear," is a supernatural power, a magical power, yet it is never easy to obtain it. Journey to the West, herein called Journey, is regarded as a nonsense mythological novel by ordinary people. In fact, it really is not. Author Wu Qingyin was an eminent Dharma monk who came from India to China and faced the wall for 9 years. In order to help people to understand Buddhist theory and Buddhist scriptures, and to relieve their souls from suffering, he promoted Dharma in the form of accessible stories by writing fictional accounts based upon profound Buddhist theory. Ordinary people may regard Journey as mythological, but with Dharma eyes, it becomes very real. I used Journey as an example of how, when you refine yourself to higher levels, you will understand the many meanings of life and the enormous functions of the mind to life. The whole story of Journey was to enlighten its readers. Connoisseurs know knowledge. Lay people like jollification. Sakya picked a flower and Kassapa smiled. Only by reaching a level of telepathy can you resonate with each other spiritually and smile. The Monkey King in Journey traveled thousands of miles to pursue Tao. In the end, he arrived at Crescent Moon and Three Stars Cave in Jambudvipa, the Celestial Islands continent, sought Bodhi Patriarch as his master, and finally received the secret of longevity, learned the supernatural power of 72 different forms, and of mounting the clouds and riding the mist. The whole process is enlightenment to humans. It teaches us that if we want to sublimate the meaning of life, then we must cast off all our worldly ties. The birth of Monkey King from rocks tells us that it is only by disassociating from our families and affections in our conscious thinking and psychological activity, and by ridding of all our constraints that we can gain the chance to advance to the supreme life space. If we merely consider being patriotic, upholding the honor of our ancestors, and other worldly affairs, then we will stay at the same mortal level forever. It informs us that once we determine to pursue Tao, we must overcome all hardships and be very persistent, just as Sakyamuni sitting under the Bodhi tree would not rise until he was enlightened. This is the only way. It enlightens us learn that no trees can bear ginseng fruit on the earth. Well then, where is the Wuzhuang temple? It is definitely not in the mortal world. In this sense, We must expand our view of thinking into the vast universe, surpass the limitations of space and time, and enter into another space to discover the mysteries of life in the distant heaven. Wukong's master wanted him to learn the knowledge of art, circulation, and movement. Wukong asked, "Will this knowledge make me immortal?" Master replied, "No," and Wukong said over and over again, "Then, I don't want to learn these three skills." This tells us that profound knowledge does not exist in these three types of knowledge, which are actually different levels of supernatural powers. If we restrict our thinking and consciousness to the level of art, we will never arrive at the other side of life. Wukong's refinement at Crescent Moon and Three Stars Cave was actually that he had uplifted himself with the knowledge of the soul, including thinking, consciousness, spirit, and psychological activities. When we grasp the secrets of soul and life, then 72 different forms, or even 1,000 kind of transformations, are not difficult. It is not fanciful to mount the clouds and ride the mist, or rise to heaven and fall to earth. Speaking of mounting the clouds and riding the mist, people often regard this as a thinking fantasy and talking idiotic nonsense, but in fact, when we let go of our consciousness and expand our thinking, then we will find that it is a very common life phenomenon in another space and time. Consider astronauts in spacecraft and consider the footprints left by those who flew to the moon. Then suppose that the moon is smaller than its actual size. Half its size, one-third its size, down to a sphere as small as a football field. In these cases, could people have flown there? Or suppose the size of the Earth remains, but its weight is reduced to 5 metric tons. Could you then mount the clouds and ride the mist? Then, suppose that your weight is not 70 kilograms, but 20, 10, or 1 kilogram, or 1 gram, or even as light as a feather. Could you then mount the clouds and ride the mist? You should know that the spiritual entity, soul, which constructs life is weightless. Without a spiritual entity, soul, there is no life, but without material form, there is no life either. Life requires both. Life is 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. Not 1 is equal to 1 and not 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. Spiritual entities can exist alone and material objects can exist alone. When spiritual entities and material objects exist separately, there is no life. It is only when the two are combined together that life generates. Just as with hydrogen and oxygen atoms, it is only when the two are combined together that water forms. Like cloud clusters with positive and negative charges, it is only when the two meet with each other that lightning and thunder will be generated. Souls can accomplish their functions only when they are attached to material objects. Souls can not only be attached to the bodies of humans and animals, but also to plants, rocks, houses, storms, rivers, ponds, cars, TVs, and any other things. There are lots of examples in the Bible. Many prophets have made incredible though obscure prophecies after having been possessed by spirits from supreme life space. Jesus cured many sick people who were possessed by evil spirits. There are countless records and instances of being possessed by souls or haunted by ghosts at all times and all throughout the world. Seth conveyed information of life to common people through an attachment to an American woman. There are many examples of souls becoming attached to lightning. Here are 2 examples. In 1899, a man was struck dead by lightning in his courtyard. 30 years later, his son was killed in the same way and at the same place. On October 8, 1949, his grandson was struck dead by lightning in the same courtyard. 3 generations were struck dead by lightning in the same place. These phenomena are clearly a spirit's revenge through the use of lightning. In 1918, a Canadian major, St. Mary May Ford, was struck by lightning. The same thing happened to him in 1924 and he became partially paralyzed, and again in 1930, and he became fully paralyzed. He died 2 years later, but his tomb was struck into pieces by lightning in June 1934. An article compiled by Xiaoya is a perfect example of a soul attached to a car. The car was of a German make with 6 seats and it embodied excellent performance, luxury, and style, yet it earned the nickname of a killing monster because during its years on the road, it killed 18 people, injured 7 others, and also led to the outbreak of the Great World War. The first incident occurred on June 28, 1914, when the Crown Prince of Austria and his princess were assassinated while inside of it. This became the spark that ignited the Great World War. The second time, it killed a queen and her friends riding in it. The third time, it killed Austria's 5th Division general commander. The fourth time was the advisor to the general captain who not only smashed his head into the front, but also killed 2 farmers walking on the road. The fifth time was after the Great World War broke and another county's head of state inherited this car. He had 4 traffic accidents within 4 months, his backbone was broken, and he was permanently handicapped. The car was later owned or ridden by Dr. Kusakith, then a jeweler, a Swiss car racer, a farmer and his workers, as well as Tabor as a taxi, and his 6 friends, respectively. None of them escaped from this car's horrible karma. Finally, it was blasted into pieces by an Allied bomber during the Second World War and completely disappeared from the world without a single piece ever being recovered. Were these accidents or coincidences? I infer that the artisan who made this car was ill-treated and his soul had become attached to it, so that he was able to foster a series of tragedies after his death to comfort his injured soul. We know that some wooden houses can make creaky sounds late at night. The reasons are not from thermal contraction or from wood breaking, but rather because the carpenters building them had been ill-treated and deprived of their due compensations. For this reason, they are angry and their souls often visit the houses to show their indignation after their deaths. Whenever there is unevenness, there will be sounds and shocks. All uprisings, rebellions, disasters, assassinations, and revolts throughout human history, even earthquakes, fires, and floods, are the results of indignated souls. There are plenty of cases of souls that have been attached to cars, boats, buildings, trees, flowers, and even grass. These are not difficult to find in historical records. In short, life is 1 + 1 is equal to 1. Flesh without a spiritual entity is a corpse, and we cannot regard a corpse as a life. In the same way, a spiritual entity without flesh is a soul, and neither can we regard this invisible wave as life. Knowing what life is, we shall now discuss its origin. We have learned about the origin of the highest life in the universe, the greatest creator in time, space, and the universe. We have learned the origin of supreme space life and the origin of human beings from humanity and human life. Now let us consider the origin of tangible life on Earth. There are many ideas about the origins of life on Earth. Some are that it originated from lipid molecules, from RNA, from the proto-ocean, from Venus, from deep-sea vents, from volcanoes on the Earth, from outer space, that comets with water hit the Earth which began it, and still others say from Earth slides or lightning or from any of numerous other suggestions. Most of these explanations listed above are reasonable because metaplastic lives, microorganisms, and fungi are generated from the land, oceans, deep-sea vents, and volcanic zones, and not only in these special areas above, but also from soil air, the dead bodies of plants and animals, rivers, ponds, and rubbish heaps. Trillions of them form and die daily, regardless of what the weather conditions are, and as long as the environmental conditions keep changing, new species will be generated. It can be said that the growth of populations, pollution of the environment, aggravation of the greenhouse effect, and the expansion of the hole in the ozonosphere will generate the new species, even in new bacteria expanding in large scales. Vast amounts of new bacteria may stop the ecology from worsening further, or they may lead to great disasters and plagues for humanity, perhaps much worse than even Europe's Black Death in the late Middle Ages. Unlike the SARS transmitting among humans, it may contaminate millions of people simultaneously. Besides metaplastic life, hygroculous life can randomly generate from within the Earth. As long as there is water, the molecular structure of soil will change and generate new life. Moss, lichen, and grasses are generated thusly. Let us focus on animals, insects, trees, and flowers, and see what the origins of these life forms are. Before we continue, please reread The Greatest Creator of Life Genuine. It will be very difficult to understand the origin of life if you do not read this book first, for it is only when we recognize the greatest creator's position properly as the highest life in the universe that will we be able to clearly understand the origin of life. The universe did not start with a big bang. Today's galaxies and star systems are different from those of antiquity. Every heavenly body and galaxy in the universe has its own origin and function. As we know from fundamental physical knowledge, the total amount of energy in the universe is fixed and never varies. and perpetual motion machines are unreal. Inevitably, the motion of the moon, the earth, and the stars need to be powered by some force. But where does the primordial motive power come from? You might have a large pile of tiles, cement, and wood, but they cannot build a house without being designed and arranged by people, not to mention the intricacy of celestial bodies spinning around each other at high speeds. They could never construct star systems by themselves. Our solar system came into being 4.5 billion years ago due to extended painstaking efforts of the greatest creator, gods, and celestial beings. The Earth was the first one formed in our solar system. Although astronomers believe that the history of the Sun is longer than that of the Earth, this does not mean that the Sun was the first body in the solar system. We all know that black holes populate the universe. Some scientists believe that black holes are magnetic vortices caused by the gravitation between two or more celestial bodies passing by each other, just as with a typhoon and a tornado. But this cannot be true because black holes are aggregates of high-energy matter. The more energy they have, the less tangible they will be. Great form has no contour. We may compare black holes to batches of covered dough from which a cook has removed one piece according to his need for making a meal. The black hole is exactly that covered dough, while the Earth is that small piece which has been removed, and the greatest creator and his assistants, gods, are the cook who has removed the small piece. After the emergence of the Earth, the Sun was moved from somewhere. In order to make the Earth rotate around the Sun constantly, additional planets were added to the solar system. Therefore, the entire solar system exists to serve the Earth. This means that humans exist on the Earth, but they cannot exist on other planets of the solar system. After arranging the solar system, the gods sent down hundreds of millions of angels, super celestial beings, to terraform the Earth. Water and the atmosphere were designed and created, and the combination of water, air, sunlight, and soil produced a large biomass of metaplastic microbes and hygrocoelous grasses on the Earth. Then the super celestial beings began to build pyramids. These were not the pyramids in Egypt, but ones that spread along the 30 degrees north latitude and 30 degrees south latitude in the ocean beds of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. They served as laboratories for developing life on Earth because they could gather effectively the special energy of the Sun to speed up its growth and development. Super celestial beings designed and created most of the insects, all trees and flowers, and all herbivores on Earth today from within the pyramids, and then transported these lives to every part of the Earth by advanced aircraft. The whole process lasted slightly more than 1 billion years. In the process of creating animals, celestial beings found that water needed to be brought inland for the plants and animals to spread across the Earth. Therefore, they opened a mind to build a space station and constructed what we now see as the Moon by using metals from the Earth. With the Moon, the Earth became alive, not only bringing an ebb and flow, wind, clouds, snow, and rain, but also illuminating the night. After more than 1 billion years of creation, the Earth morphed into a beautiful, rich, and prosperous paradise. It was a nearly perfect replica of the 10,000-year world. Super celestial beings, we can call them advanced intelligent people, were very pleased with the Earth that they had made and did not want to leave it. But they had to do so in order to avoid the jealousy that was forming in other people. To protect their creation secrets, they dropped all the pyramids to the bottom of the oceans. The beautiful continent of Atlantis disappeared forever. As for the origins of other insects, carnivores, dinosaurs, and humans, please refer to Humanity and Human Life of Life Genuine. We can conclude that apart from the lives of Metaplasia and Humidogene, all other species on Earth were designed and created separately rather than linearly by evolution, just as the tools that we use have been designed and created by people. Although unicycles, bicycles, carts, carriages, cars, and trucks share commonalities with each other, all were designed and created separately by humans. Carriages will always be carriages and can never transform into trucks. Snails will always be snails and can never evolve into farm cattle, and monkeys will always be monkeys and can never evolve into humans. The features of life. Xiefeng, August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. The essence of life is a non-material structure with spirituality. To make life dynamic and expressive, its non-material essence must be embedded within a specific material structure with the help of energy. We will regard the features of life in this sense. There are 8 features of lives on Earth. They have form, consciousness, spirituality, vitality, birth, metabolism, death, transformation. Those things which have these 8 features are lives. Those that do not are not. Let us consider some examples. People are lives because they have forms which are visible, touchable, and occupy space. They have consciousness and are able to respond to changes in their objective material worlds and form ideas by perceiving messages from their eyes, ears, noses, tongues, and bodies, and transforming them into thoughts that guide their words and deeds. They have spirituality, and souls are only its foundations, things such as their yearning for better futures, revering the greatest creator, worshiping gods and Buddha, loving nature, and selfless devotion to humanity are expressions of people's spirituality. They have vitality so they can move, walk, sit, lie, work, and create. They experience birth, whether from their mother's womb or even by being cloned. They have beginnings. They have metabolisms which are illustrated by their processes of birth, childhood, young adulthood, middle-agedness, and old age. They die. Nobody lives forever, and everyone has the same ending, death. They transform. According to the principle of the conservation of matter, human bodies absorb energy as they grow through life, but their flesh is absorbed by microbes after they die and is converted into other energy. From the perspective of eternal spiritual bodies, human spiritual entities are non-material informational structures, and after they die, they enter into the horizontal time domain and begin new rounds of a life cycle in another space-time dimension. Nobody would deny that people are lives, but what about livestock, wild animals, flying birds, and even fish? Needless to say, they are all life and have consciousnesses. Some may have doubts concerning their spirituality and transformations, but in fact, you can find that animals have spirituality if you observe and pay close attention to them. For example, dogs and cats like to win attention. Parrots often imitate sounds. Horses do not commit incest. Dolphins play with people. All these phenomena prove the spirituality of animals. In addition, there are stories of animals showing gratitude, the tricks of circus animals, the strange attention-getting courtship rituals of animals, the noble, self-sacrificial spirit showed by some animals to avoid species extermination, and many others, all indicate that animals have spirituality. As for the transformations of animals after death, they only appear in the narrations and descriptions of myths and fictional stories. Humans still do not understand them from the perspective of science, which shows that science has not yet developed to a sufficient level and that human thoughts have not reached the level of such understanding. Why are there fewer and fewer animals and more people on the earth now? In fact, most animals transform into people. By analyzing people's habits, we find that some people are naturally cruel because they have transformed from tigers, wolves, leopards, and other carnivores. Some are timid because they have transformed from small herbivorous prey species. Some are naturally stubborn but loyal and reliable because they have transformed from cattle, sheep, and other livestock. Some are born cunning because they have transformed from foxes. Some are born clever, good at temporizing, and flattering because they have transformed from domestic dogs. Then, what about the insects and microorganisms, henceforth called microbes? Of course, they are lives too. About the spirituality of insects, please read The Entomological Memories, written by the famous French entomologist Henri Fabre. This 10-volume, 400 million-word monograph is filled with lively, vivid descriptions about the spirituality of many insects. In fact, if we observe carefully, dung beetles shaping manure into balls to carry home, the tacit teamwork of ants and bees, and the movements and skills of flies mating, we find that insects certainly have spirituality. As for the transformations of insects and microbes after death, they all belong to another space, world. Though insects and microbes are closely related to people, the nature of their lives is extremely different from ours. There are no transformations between them and us. That is, people will not become insects or microbes, nor vice versa. Now let us consider whether plants have spirituality or not. I will start by referring to some instances from an article on the web. Lagerstremia indica plants in the Nan Hua Temple on Tiantai Mountain have leaves and branches that actually swing when people touch them. Mimosa draw their leaves back when they are touched. Dancing grass is so named because it has small leaves that keep dancing after the wind stops blowing. During the war against Japan, a large number of bamboos around China bloomed suicidally. The bamboo would die soon after blooming white flowers. During the late 1980s, after the Jianghuai flood in the spring, the local bamboo also flowered, which predicted the summer floods and proved the local proverb that says, "Floods will come when bamboos bloom flowers." Clivia never bloom around troubled or inharmonious families, but do bloom in advance to announce good news and when happy events coming. Oaks will blow themselves up when loggers come, and carrots will quiver in fear when rabbits enter their fields. Ammeters have shown that tequila plants with palm shapes react to people's psychological feelings and even trace their owners' daily feelings of safety, danger, joy, and anger. If plants that are fond of light are planted in dank places, they become disgruntled and do not grow well, but if ombrophyte are planted in sunny places, they will become frustrated and even die. Some plants release poisonous gases. Evening primrose can make hospital patients with hypertension and heart diseases feel uncomfortable, and some plants can make the people whom they dislike become allergic and fall ill. Grapevines planted next to pine trees do not bear fruit, but ones planted next to elms bear sour fruit. We have found that plants will burst into tears and release angry biowaves when a branch is broken, but will flourish and release joyous biowaves when we water them, fertilize them, care for them, play music for them, and talk to them. Giraffes prefer a particular tree which can release toxic gases within a few minutes after they begin to eat them to force the giraffes to stop eating and go away. In myth novels, plants, especially flowers, possess human-like spirituality, and they are even regarded as fairies descending from the upper world. In short, plants have spirituality. They have languages, emotions, memories, thoughts, induction, and all the features possessed by people. Plants protect us when we cherish them, but punish us when we harm them. Can plants be transformed into other lives after death? Yes. Non-flowering vegetation transforms into microbes. Flowering vegetation transforms into insects. Flowering and fruiting vegetation transform into herbivores. Vegetation does not transform directly into carnivores or people after death. All flowering plants derive from the nimbus of celestial world, and that is where they return directly, so they are not transformed into humans. Grass also has life, but its life, along with insects and others, forms their own life system which does not belong to the system of animals, flowers, trees, human celestial beings, and Buddhas. In other words, people will not be transformed into grass, and vice versa. Nothing but humans, microbes, insects, and other animals, flowers, and trees can be regarded as life. But this does not mean that they lack spirituality. All things have spirituality. Mountains, water, the earth, stones, and especially gems, all have spirituality. Metal and almost everything else has memory. Although these substances possess most of the properties of life, they do not have consciousness and cannot be transformed into other life after they pass on, so they are not within the life category. What about invisible super-celestial beings, Buddha, gods, devils, ghosts, and others who are of the spirit world? They can be seen as life only when they take on physical forms. Without a physical form, they are only spirits. This is why Jesus Christ, Buddha Sakyamuni, and Lao Tzu took human forms when they appeared before us. The people going to the 1,000-year world or the 10,000-year world after death are not spirits, but life, because they will retain physical forms. But in the case of those who become Buddha after death, they have the power to change their forms, so they can exist in the Elysium world as spirits or miraculously transform into any physical form freely and omnipotently. In short, we should distinguish between life and non-life with those 8 features listed above. Anything that has them is life, and anything that does not is not. The meaning of life. Xiefeng, August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. From knowing the origin of life, we shall know the meaning of life. Without the universe, there is no life. Without life, there is no universe. The universe exists for life. Life exists for universe. We construct buildings with the purpose of providing places for various human activities. They would have no value if nobody used them, and they would soon wear out and collapse. But if people do use and maintain them, then they will exist for a long time. If there were no life activities on the Earth, in the solar system, in the Milky Way galaxy, or even in the entire universe, then none of them would have come into being. We are talking the meaning of life from a broad perspective here, but in the narrow sense. The meaning of microbes such as bacteria is to serve the insects and vegetation. The meaning of insects and vegetation is to serve animals. The meaning of animals is to serve people. The meaning of people is to serve celestial beings in the celestial world. The meaning of celestial beings is to serve the gods. The meaning of the gods is to serve the greatest creator. The meaning of the greatest creator is to serve all life forms. All in all, the meaning of life is to serve the greatest creator, and the meaning of the greatest creator is to serve all life forms in the universe. The levels of life. Xiefeng, August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. In terms of the non-material structure of its spirituality, life can be divided into 16 levels. Successively, they are: at the first level, the greatest creator. It possesses perfect non-material structure. Its psychic energy is able to penetrate all material and all spaces without any hindrance. At the second level, gods. It possesses defective non-material structure. Its psychic energy is able to penetrate all materials and most spaces, but cannot enter into the zero world and cannot compete with the greatest creator. At the third level, celestial beings and Buddha. All the celestial beings and Buddha are at the same level of life, and with only racial differences. Based on their magical power, celestial beings can be divided into the following categories: super celestial beings, deity celestial beings, land celestial beings, human celestial beings, ghost celestial beings. The basic features of super celestial beings are: they are not bound by time or space. They can sense subtle changes throughout the universe. They can sense the consciousnesses of the greatest creator and gods and make rapid responses according to their consciousnesses. They can be visible or invisible, tangible or intangible. They have ever-changing magical powers which allow them to be in thousands of incarnations and exist in different life spaces at the same time. Their base camp is the Celestial Islands continent of the Elysium world. The basic features of deity celestial beings are: they are unable to change into thousands of incarnations, yet they have magical powers to mount the clouds and ride the mist. They can be invisible and can transform and travel between yin and yang space freely. They need no food supplies and can discern past and future. They can travel billions of miles in the blink of an eye. They dislike living in groups, so they do not have any base camp. They travel everywhere they want and do whatever they like. Except for the zero world and the heaven world, they can travel anywhere, which is the so-called powerful and unconstrained style of independence. The basic features of land celestial beings are: they enjoy long lifespans, require less food and drinks, and are free from diseases and worries. They are able to walk on the surface of water, walk through walls, and fly over the tops of the trees. They are able to travel thousands of miles without becoming fatigued. Their base camp is the 10,000-year world. They may occasionally appear in the human world, but ordinary people cannot see or hear them or sense their presence. The basic features of human celestial beings are: they have physical bodies, but their consciousnesses are different from those of ordinary people. They have obtained knowledge such as the structure of the universe, 36-dimensional spaces, the origin of the universe, life and human beings, the transformation mechanism of causality, and the law of transmigration of life. They are sages attaining Tao and possessing perfect human nature. They do not have private property and do not participate in any form of confrontation or competition. They take things as they are, associate with others by following predestined relations, act in accordance with their nature, and take advantage of opportunities that arise. They live with perfect spirituality and human nature. They know clearly the next stop of their life and have no fear of death in any sense. That means that they have escaped the shackles of death. The community of human celestial beings is on the 1,000-year world. Only 1 out of every 10,000 people in human society possess the qualities of human celestial beings. If they can take one extra step, then they will join the ranks of human celestial being. The basic features of ghost celestial beings are: their flesh is dead, but their consciousnesses still remain in the human world. They are transformed generally from those extremely intelligent people who are too anxious to accomplish their purpose. Buddhas. According to the nature of Buddha, Buddhas can be divided into 10 categories. Buddhas on the supreme authentic wisdom continent are the most superior ones. Other Buddhas live on the God's continent, Moon Temple continent, the continent for 3 realms lives to pass through, Celestial Islands continent, Amida Buddha continent, Ingwu continent, Kasaipa continent, the Borneo continent, and the Lotus continent by their levels. Buddhas on the Lotus continent are the minimum level ones. In the human world, there are no Buddhas in a real sense, but only everyone's original natures. Once people attain their original natures through self-cultivation, their physical bodies will pass into parinirvana immediately, and their life will reach the primary level of Buddhas on the Lotus continent. Or the 4th level, devils. Devils is the incarnation of Buddha. It is a brief but extreme manifestation of Buddhas who are self-refining. The power of the devils is greater than that of Buddhas and can easily reach the level of gods. Therefore, the greatest creator attends to the matter himself whenever a great quantity of devils emerge and restrains them in the cathode black hole body. The 5th level, humans. Humans are a kind of life living on Earth and relying on their visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, and spiritual perceptions. They do not possess the ability of supernatural transformation and must live on food. According to their origin, humans can be classified into any of 5 categories: ignorant people, laity, mortals, sages, and celestials. Ignorant people rely on instinct for survival, and their previous existence was a tree or a lower-level animal. Laity rely on desire for survival, and their previous existence was a higher-level animal, livestock, or a flying bird. Mortals rely on sentiment for survival, and their previous existence was a laity or a mortal. Sages rely on rationality for survival, and their previous existence was a celestial or a sage. Celestials rely on spirituality to survive, and their previous existence was a celestial or human celestial being from the 1,000-year world. In addition, 1 out of every 10 million people in human society are celestial beings from the 10,000-year world, Buddhas from the Elysium world, or gods from heaven carrying special missions. The 6th level, flying birds. Flying birds are a kind of life living in 4-dimensional space. Their wisdom is lower than humankind, but they have more freedom, and their space of activities are larger than that of humankind. Flying birds are gregarious and belong to cooperative living species. Red-crowned cranes are the highest level of flying birds, enjoying a longer lifespan and a high level of spirituality. Other cranes, storks, and wild geese are at the 2nd level. Eagles and owls are at the 3rd level. Warblers, parrots, and hummingbirds dwelling in the forest, pigeons, and crows inhabiting broad areas, and mandarin ducks, egrets, and other ducks living by water are at an even lower level. Poultry and other birds with wings but who cannot fly, such as ostriches, are at the lowest level of birds. The 7th level, flowering plants. Flowering plants refer to all those flowering but infertile plants, including some flowering but fruitless trees and herbs. Flowering plants possess very high spirituality. They are almost imitations of flowering plants in the 10,000-year world. In addition to decorating nature, the main function of flowering plants is to serve the sages and celestials by reminding and enlightening those people with high spirituality not to forget the existence of the deity celestial being world and to advance to the 10,000-year world. The highest level of flowering plants are peonies. The 2nd level of flowers include Chinese herbaceous peonies, Chinese flowering crabapples, lotuses, daffodils, winter sweets, sweet-scented osmanthus, plums blossom, lunar September chrysanthemums, Magnolia denudata, azaleas, orchids, and epiphyllums. The middle-level flowers include roses, cloves, Clivia minata, spring orchids, Chinese hibiscuses, Albizia julibrissin, Indian calameres herbs, jasmines, winter jasmines, laurels, tulips, chrysanthemums, cacti, Echinopsis tubiflorum, and the like. The lowest level of flowers are poplar blossoms, reed catkins, rattan flowers, day lilies, and water caltrop flowers. The eighth level, livestock. Livestock are under human control and protection and serve the needs of humankind directly. Although they are not as free as wild animals, their risk of danger to their survival is lower than the others. If wild animals were to be compared to illiterate people, then domestic ones would be like disciplined high school students or university students trained by civilization. Wild animals only know how to obtain, whereas domestic animals only know how to dedicate. Or the ninth level, wildlife on land and aquatic life in the sea. The 10th level, trees. The 11th level, insects. Or the 12th level, herbs and crops. Glossy Ganodermas are the most superior level of herbs. Asparagus ferns and bracket plants are high level of herbs. Crops and vegetables are middle level herbs. Plain grass is at the lowest level. The 13th level, microorganisms and fungi. The 14th level, demons and monsters in hell. Or the 15th level, life in frozen layer. The 16th level, life in inflamed layer. The levels of life have been divided into the above categories mainly according to their levels of spirituality of life. The higher their levels of life are, the higher their levels of freedom, living standards, and quality of life will be, and vice versa. That is to say, gods do not want to become celestial beings or Buddhas, celestial beings and Buddhas do not want to become humans, humans do not want to become birds, birds do not want to become flowers, flowers do not want to become domestic animals, domestic animals do not want to become wild or aquarium animals, and wild animals do not want to become trees or crops, and so on and so forth. For humankind, the direction of the advancement of life should aim toward higher spaces of life. Ignorant persons should advance toward laity, laity should advance toward mortals, mortals should advance toward sages, sages should advance toward human celestial beings, and human celestial beings should advance toward land celestial beings, deity celestial beings, super celestial beings, and Buddhas. The path of life is very clear. From the perspective of space, people in the human world should strive for the 1,000-year world, human celestial beings there should strive for the 10,000-year world, land celestial beings there should aim toward the free deity celestial beings, and deity celestial beings who wander worldwide all day long should strive toward becoming super celestial beings in Elysium world, which is the top level of life. It is impossible for human beings to become gods, and needless to say, there is no possibility of becoming the unique greatest creator. Everything is clear and simple when seen from this perspective. The Transmigration of Life. Xiefeng, August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. Essentially, nothing in the universe exists except for energy and life. When energy is absorbed into non-material structures with spirituality, lives manifest themselves. When lives possess consciousnesses, thousands of manifestations of substances will come about. All matter originates from energy and returns to energy in the end. All lives originate from structures and return to structures in the end. Where there is energy, there is life. The total amount of energy in the universe is constant and unchanging. The total number of lives in the universe never increases or decreases. The total amount of energy and the number of lives are proportional. The ratio between them is constant. Although new life can be created, it has a saturation point. After reaching this point, no new life can be created. But once it is created, life cannot be extinguished because its nature is a non-material structure with spirituality, and this non-material structure does not die. It can only transform from one form to another and from one space to another. As the number of people on Earth increases, the number of animals and plants decreases accordingly, and were the number of human celestial beings in the 1,000-year world to increase, then the number of people in the mortal world would decrease accordingly. This is the way it goes. The transmigration of life runs in these 10 spaces: the Elysium world, the 10,000-year world, the 1,000-year world, the mortal world, the livestock world, the animal world, the plant world, the nether world, the frozen layer, the inflamed layer. The holographic order world refers only to the spaces of energy aggregation. The zero world is a special, unique place for the greatest creator. The heaven world is the place for gods. The cathode black hole body is the prison for senior life, devils. The anode black hole body is only a place for temporary transformation of life, reincarnation. The dream world is a place for demonstrations of past and future of lives from all spaces. The bacteria and insect worlds, including the herbs of the plant world, are transmigration and transformation places for another nature of life. Is life really immortal? Is it really all transmigration and transformation? Yes, life is really immortal, but what is mortal are just its manifestations. When we see that someone is dead, it does not mean that their life is dead, but only that their carrier is dead. It is as if we moved out of an old house and into a new one. The previous house became useless, or it was being called dead. We cannot say that we have died just because we moved out when our previous house became empty. What would we do if we wanted to cross a river and travel to the other side? We would build or rent a boat, but once the boat pulls onto the opposite shore, we would abandon it because the boat would have accomplished its mission, and we would then go ashore and continue along our way. We are life. The boat is flesh. The river is life. We enter into this river by means of our bodies and then paddle toward the other side. As soon as we land ashore, we would abandon our boat or body and continue on with our journey. Should we describe candles that have burnt down to their ends as being dead? Their external forms are indeed dead and no longer exist, but their nature, their energy, has been converted and has floated up into the air or onto the bodies of other objects and lives on. When we eat apples, we chew and swallow them into our stomachs until at last only their seeds remain. Where have the apples gone? Have they died? Yes, their external forms no longer exist. They are as dead as they can be, but their nature, their energy, will have been converted and transformed into nutrition for our bodies. If we expose a cup of water to sunshine, it will evaporate after several hours. But where will it go? Will it be dead? No, surely water does not die. What will die is just the water's form, but its nature will turn into vapor and rise up to the sky. When it meets cold air, it will drop down to the earth in the form of rain or snow. Therefore, water is constantly cycling, transmigrating. If water were to die, its volume would have long since depleted. In the second section of Unconventional Thinking, in my article entitled, Life and Death Are Only Images. Life has neither life nor death. I demonstrated the philosophic principle that life has neither life nor death and listed some examples such as the regeneration of a girl, the witness of the reincarnation of the living Buddha of Tibet, and the results of research at the International Near-Death Research Institute. You may wish to reread this part once again. It might occur to you suddenly that someplace or something seems so familiar that you feel like you have been there before or touched it before, but this only happens when your mind is in a peaceful, resting state, and that feeling disappears quickly. Why does this feeling arise? It is because this phenomenon is a reflection of your instant memory from past environments in your previous lives which are buried into your subconscious thoughts. When people come to places where they have never been before, they may get sudden feelings that seem very familiar, and those feelings are proof that they used to live or work there in a previous life. Generally speaking, everyone gets these feelings if they were human in their previous lives, and if they remained human after transmigrating. If they were not human in their previous lives, but were transmigrated from other forms of life, then they would usually not have these kinds of feelings because animals sense things differently. With the rapid developments of human societies and the great environmental changes in the modern era, it is relatively difficult for people to relive these past memories. Some people have mirages in their consciousnesses very often and are extremely sensitive to illusory space, which could indicate that their previous life environments were not in the mortal human world, but rather in the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or even the Elysium world. The higher one's spirituality is, the stronger their feelings for the nature of life will be, but the duller their spirituality is, the weaker those feelings will be. Death is just a phenomenon of life, but eternity is the essence of life. Actually, there is no birth or death in any sense for the essence of life, but only matters of transformations through transmigrations. This is an indisputable fact. The Trajectory of Life. Xiefeng, August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. Everything moves along its trajectory. The galaxy, solar system, Earth, Moon, and all the other satellites have their tracks respectively. Trains, cars, atoms, electrons, all kinds of rays, and electromagnetic waves have theirs respectively. Clouds appear to float in the sky freely with the air currents, but they also follow their own moving tracks. Meteorologists can predict the weather several weeks in advance because they know the laws of the clouds' floating tracks. If clouds did not follow their own moving tracks, then the meteorologists would be unable to forecast the weather. Also, if they did not have their own moving tracks, then they would always be appearing over deserts, rain would fall there, and those deserts would be forests and jungles. Life has trajectories, too. Different life forms are different from each other with respect to lifespans, survival needs, body sizes, internal and external characteristics, and food requirements, because every life form has its own trajectory. People have their life trajectories, too. Each time someone looks back at their past, they will see their life trajectory. People have found that man proposes, God disposes, and man manages small things. Big events are in the hands of the greatest creator long ago. Why? Because each person has their own life trajectory. Whether a person was born male or female, black or white, noble or humble, royal or common, all has been determined by their life trajectory. Even their times of their birth and death have been determined by it as well. If you do not believe in the existence of life trajectories, then try to see how badly you will be battered. Can you become a president, a scientist, a singer, or a robber? Can you become a billionaire through hard work? Can you have 3 spouses? Can you be as handsome and elegant as 007? Can you be another Jet Li or Madonna? If you think you can, then please try. But if you cannot, then ask yourself why not. Many people try to learn how to become as famous as celebrities by reading their biographies. Others expect to become successful after reading books such as The Complete Works of Knowledge. Some idolize and envy those stars and vow silently to become like them. Some want to follow the examples of people who have earned fortunes overnight, and some cannot accept how their friends and classmates get promotions while they do not. But no matter how intensely one thinks or learns, they will never be the same as anyone else. Why? Because everyone has their own life trajectory. If you do not believe me, just try it. Present situations have been determined by yesterday's effort, and today's efforts are just for tomorrow. Your current trajectory had been determined by the karma from your previous life, and your efforts during this lifetime are just for your future one. So, what good lies in jealousy, dissatisfaction, or disconcerting? A wise life should proceed thusly. Take things as they are, associate with others by following predestined relations, act in accordance with your nature, and take advantage of opportunities as they arise. Life has its trajectory, but who designs and formulates the trajectories of life? It is not the greatest creator, not deity celestial beings, not the emperors, not our parents, not anyone but ourselves. In order to understand it, let us talk about karma. What is karma? To maintain the sum of positive and negative energy in the universe as zero is called karma. The first law of thermodynamics, as written by the 19th century German physicist Rudolf Clausius, maintains that the zero sum of positive and negative energy in a closed system always remains zero. Expanded to the entire universe, it is what we call karma. In simple words, the law of the conservation of energy is karma. A popular phrase, as we sow, so shall we reap, means karma. It is impossible to describe the mechanism of karma in detail without possessing the wisdom of the greatest creator. So I will list several well-known examples to show you whether or not there is karma. Iraqi President Saddam Hussein was ousted and arrested by American and British governments. Might there have been any connection between this event and his invasion and occupation of Kuwait? If we regard this event as a result, then can we say that his incursion into Kuwait was the cause? Surely it is not the only one. But if the cause of the invasion of Kuwait had not happened, then would the effect have not taken place? Is there any connection between the toppling of New York's World Trade Center in the United States and the hardline foreign affairs policy of its government? If the bombing could be seen as an effect, then can the United States' hardline policy be seen as the cause? Of course it was not the only cause. Why did Hitler kill so many Jews? Why did the Japanese invade China? Why did the Crusades happen? Were there no causes for these? Why did sandstorms occur in northern China? Why did the SARS and bird flu viruses emerge? Why do rivers overflow? Are there no causes for these? Why is the United States so prosperous in spite of its short, 200-year history, while China had remained poor and backward for much of its long, 5,000-year history? Why is Europe so developed while Africa is not? Are people admitted to doctoral courses overnight, or are they admitted because of their natural endowments, family and social environments, and hard work? If someone suffers a heart attack, does it occur out of the blue, or is it a product of their medical history and mental and psychological state? Could somebody feel a sudden headache, stomach ache, or angina attack without any reason? If someone gets into a car crash, is stabbed by a person wielding a knife, or collapses, are there no causes for these? Some people are able to stay in five-star hotels, while others can only lodge in cheap inns or even sleep on the streets. Are there no reasons? Some people are born into wealthy families, and some are born into poverty. Are there no reasons for this? The evolution of life. Xiefeng, August 16, 2005. Translated by Transin. Life is a non-material structure with spirituality, and its evolution is based on changes of the life body's material structures, which does not mean the visible material flesh, but the microscopic material structure of the flesh. There are not many differences among people's physical bodies and shapes, so we can be led to believe that everyone is nearly the same, but there are actually many differences among different people in the microscopic structures of human bodies. The Buddha's relics left behind after some eminent monk's death are obvious examples. We cannot see the tiny changes of these microscopic material structures because the motion and changes of the microscopic world cannot be seen directly and clearly. If we judge the subtle changes of life structures by our experiences and cognitions in our daily lives, then we can never understand the evolution of life. The evolution of life is a gradual changing process. Without gradual changes, the motions and changes of material does not exist at all. Everything is changing constantly, and as long as these changes continue, the microscopic structures of the materials will keep evolving. The gains and losses of the electrons and atoms generate the disintegration and recombination of molecules. All the changes of material microscopic structures need effects from either internal or external forces. Applying this law to people, the internal force is the mental activity or the thinking and conscious activities such as the psychological activity caused by the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures of joy, anger, grief, depression, and the others, and the external force might be sunshine, sound waves, magnetic forces, heat, coldness, and others. There are specific corresponding motion states between any pair of molecules. Some molecules, such as limestone and water, react violently to each other, but others, such as water and oil, are not nearly reactive. This means that all the motions and changes of matter have to observe their laws. A lustful man's blood will surge, his heartbeat will accelerate, his palms will sweat, and his speech will become uncoordinated when he sees a sexy, underclad woman. However, his body will not produce any such reaction from seeing a pig, not even a sexy one that is lactating. Life's evolution progresses in the following ways. In the case of people, as long as there are small movements of internal and external forces, human bodies are likely to produce corresponding changes of composition and decomposition at the microscopic level. Then, after those changes, their corresponding life non-material structures will change accordingly. The tiny changes of non-material structures represent the evolution of life. When these tiny advances accumulate to a certain amount and reach saturated conditions, then the non-material structure of the whole life will reach a stable state on another level, and then another life structure will begin to evolve. One example is that when the atomic structure of a person obtains electrons continually and the amount eventually reaches 900, added to their intrinsic 100, their non-material structure as person will disintegrate, and they will have taken a qualitative leap and attained the non-material structure of a celestial being. At this very moment, they will have reached death as a human being but be born as a celestial being. Another example is when the atomic structure of a person continually loses electrons. We can suppose that they lose 6 electrons for publicizing ghosts and monsters and polluting people's spirituality, for electrons for concocting various pretexts to force someone to bribe, 3 electrons for taking pleasure in other people's misfortune and ruining their success, 2 electrons for destroying mountains and woodlands, digging grasses, and filling ponds, 2 electrons for passing the Buck to self-hold and shift their misfortune onto others. 1 electron 4. Envying others' honor and high status and expecting others of falling in bad luck. And finally 1 electron 4. Beating their spouse and nagging their sons and breaching etiquette toward elder family members. At this point, they will have lost 19 electrons in total. The number of their electrons remaining will only be 81. 100 minus 19 is equal to 81. At this moment, the structure of their life will be approaching that of a dog, and if they lose one more electron, then they will die immediately and reincarnate as one because their life structure as a human being will have degraded to that level, and they will no longer be able to exist as a person. This is why some people die suddenly in their youth, others die suddenly in car accidents, and still others die suddenly from heart attacks. Their number of electrons reaches the number of a higher or lower life structure at that moment, and they, in whatever way, have to begin a new life journey. Some aged people suffer for prolonged periods of time with illnesses in beds. This is because their number of electrons is changing too slowly, and in such situations they should not linger in the human world, but try to start their new journey ASAP. The bad solution would be to curse others, blaspheme the gods and Buddha, and abuse children. The good solution would be to wish for world peace, pray for everyone could live a happy and blessing life. May those who used to hurt them enjoy happy futures and long to go to the Elysium world themselves. They had better invite people who have good knowledge of 36-dimensional space, life transmigration theory to interpret the details and sceneries of higher-level life spaces in order to help them forget about their merits and demerits in this life, rid all of their sufferings in this mortal world, let go of all their unfulfilled wishes, and start a new journey with neither worries nor regrets. Occasionally, at the moment of a life's reincarnation, special situations occur. For example, someone's number of electrons might have reached the number needed for a new life structure, but their new life, home, has not yet become ready. They have to put up with it and wait temporarily, usually for less than a month. This is just like a person who wants to move, but their new house is not ready to accommodate them, so they have to remain in their old one for a short time. Where is the new residence? The new residence refers to the anode black hole body in 36-dimensional space, namely the womb. When a fetus enters into the womb, it becomes a new residence. From time immemorial, people have always thought of fetuses as lives, but they are actually not. Fetuses are just residences, not lives. Fetuses will not be lives until a reincarnated life enters into this residence through a space tunnel in 36-dimensional space. Generally speaking, a fetus will have life within only a few days before the baby is born, but some fetuses will be born a few days later than the expected date of childbirth because no life has entered into this residence quite yet. The number of humans on the earth is increasing quickly because the number of animals is decreasing proportionally. A large number of animals that have been killed by people have made great contributions to humans and have accumulated merits and virtues. As a result, these animals will reincarnate as humans, but the vast majority of people have not killed animals, so they cannot reincarnate as animals after they die. Therefore, the diminished number of animals will not be replenished in time. If such situations continue, the ecological system's balance will be broken and humans may face the greatest calamity at any time. There are 3 ways to correct such an imbalance. People could evolve towards the high-level life space and go to the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world so as to reduce their numbers. People could self-awaken. They need to control the continuous growth of their population, protect and let animals reproduce and develop, and transfer some people forcibly down to the animal level in order to maintain the ecological balance. Those people who are forcibly transformed downward will certainly be treated unjustly, but do not worry for them because the greatest creator will deposit large stocks of wealth in their banks, and when the ecological balance stabilizes, they will be reborn back into the human world with high positions and great wealth as compensation. If the above 2 solutions do not work, then the third one will come. Pestilence, war, and starvation will eliminate some people so as to relieve the ecological imbalance. Apart from that, there is a special solution. The coming of the last phase of an age, which was warned by Jesus and Sakyamuni. In that situation, every phenomenon in heaven will vibrate, the sun will blacken, the moon will no longer illuminate, and everyone will be scared to death. The emergence of Life Genuine is to enlighten people to avoid the coming of the last phase of the age. Gods and Buddhas are humane, and the greatest creator loves humanity. Now, so much about the evolution of life, you will have to figure the rest out for yourself. All scientists, philosophers, thinkers, and statesmen are welcome to join in this discussion and argue whether I am correct. If you do not agree, fine. Just continue to carry on in your old lifestyles. 生命的价值和意义 The value and meaning of life. Xiefeng. May 18, 2011. Translated by Treasure. Life is co-substantiated by life, but each are different entities. Life is only a single journey of life in the mortal world, but life exists eternally. The former can end at any time, but the later will continue on. A life may appear as a horse in the animal world in one life, then as a person in another, and then as a celestial being in the 10,000-year world in a third. It is like a person changing their clothes to meet changing weather conditions or the fashions of the times. Those different clothes are like different lives, and the person's body is like a life. The wild grasses grow in the fields lushly. They flourish in the spring and wither in the autumn each year. The wildfire can never burn them out because they will thrive when spring breeze blowing. Flourishing once and withering once is the life of grass. But as that life ends and then spring's warmth looms, their next life begins in a never-ending cycle, while life and growth continue endlessly. Why is grass endless? Because grass life exists eternally. People have many lives. This one, all the ones before, and all the ones still to come. Just as grass grows in spring and summer, withers in autumn and winter, has done so for countless seasons, and will continue to do so for countless more. The essence of life is a non-material structure with spirituality which is invisible, untouchable, and illustrates itself through life. This is like the essentialities, forms, and use of Tao. We cannot see Tao because it is a non-material existence, but we can know that all things in the universe are its manifestations through the images of the world and the use of all things. Life comes into view through material forms which are visible and palpable. All plants, animals, and people on Earth are visible and touchable lives. Life can also exist in non-material forms which are invisible, untouchable, and are in the non-material world, such as ghosts in the underworld, gods and Buddha in the Elysium world, and super-celestial beings from the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. All these are spiritual forms. It is just like people who appear in the material world as flesh and blood, but also in the non-material world, such as Dreamland, in the form of spirits. Although the essence of life is a non-material structure with spirituality, it is difficult for people to understand it. We can view lives as souls and souls as lives. What are souls? They are consciousnesses wandering in the boundless ocean of psyche. We can simplify lives as consciousnesses to make them easier to understand. That is to say, lives are consciousnesses since the states of consciousnesses determine the existence form of lives and living environments. When a state of consciousness of a life is a pig, it lives in the livestock world in the form of a pig. When the state of consciousness of a life is a person, it appears in the material world in the form of a human being. When the state of consciousness of a life is a celestial, it appears in the form of a celestial being in the environment such as the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. When the state of consciousness of a life is a god, it appears in the non-material world in the form of God. Why did Sun Wukong in Journey to the West have 72 changes in Avatar? Because he had mastered the mystery of making consciousnesses change at will. As his consciousness changed, his form of life changed with it. Lives are hierarchical. Some belong to higher levels of life, while others belong to lower levels. For example, flying birds are higher levels than insects. Animals are higher levels than plants. People are higher levels than animals. Gods, Buddha, and celestials are higher levels than people. The greatest creator is the highest level of life. Bacteria are the lowest levels of life. After understanding this basic common sense, we know that higher levels of life have absolute power of life and death over lower levels, that lower levels serve them, and that all of them serve the greatest creator. We know that all lives serve higher levels of life, and the ultimate value is in serving the greatest creator. People raise chickens and pigs to serve people. If they did not, then they would lose their value for existence. Their loss of value for existence would surely result in their destruction. The value of the existence of people is to serve the greatest creator. If they do not, then they will lose their value of existence and will surely be made extinct. The so-called destruction does not mean that our lives would cease to exist, but that they could not exist as humans. They would have to be transformed into other forms, such as descending into the animal world to serve humans. So, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to be an actor in the grand script of universal life. The entire universe is a great dramatic performance in which each life plays a role as required by the script. A reply to Moth Orchid. Moth Orchid, hello, guide. Most people are curious about the meaning of life, and I am no exception. While managing to survive, I try my best to lead a meaningful life. I fully understand and agree with your advice about paying off my debts and ending my worldly ties during this life, but I would like to know, in addition to that, whether everyone has any other meaning in their life or a mission to improve their souls. How do I find out and understand it correctly? Guide. As an individual life, your life is not only an inevitable role to play in the big script, but it also has many plays within the big play as well, such as writing a script of life by yourself, being a director and an actor, marrying and having children, running a company, and so on. Those are the other meanings of life that you asked about. As for the mission of improving your soul, you cannot perceive this. Only higher levels of life know it. For example, Life-Genuine Celestials did not originally know their mission to sublimate their souls. They learned that only when they became Chanyuan Celestials. The best way to find and understand other meanings to your life and your mission to improve your soul correctly is to listen to the teaching and guidance of gods, Buddhas, celestial beings, and saints, and letting higher-level lives guide your way. Generally speaking, it is very difficult to realize it by yourself. Moth Orchid, as for you, would your life trajectory have been different were it not for the experience of your curious car accident? Would your life trajectory be very different now? If these changes had not occurred, would the meaning and value of the life you pursue be different? I wonder what the significance of the help and guidance that you provide to others is to yourself. Assuming that your values and views on life were different before and after the car accident, how have they respectively affected your soul? Guide. Without that car accident, there would be no Life-Genuine, and I would not have become the guide to life and life. I might have become the president of a company, in which case the trajectory of my life would be completely different. I would be pursuing money rather than to be reaping the ripe crops and ushering in the Life-Genuine era for humans, not serving for the whole of mankind and all lives, but serving for a nuclear family and glorifying my ancestors. The value and meaning of my life would be totally different. The value and significance of what I do now and what I do to help and guide you is to be rewarded as a super celestial being and to live on Barikia Island in the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. That car accident was the watershed of my life and the turning point of my life channel. Before the accident, I was confused. I knew neither where I came from nor where I was going. I only knew to keep myself busy with survival. I did not understand the meaning of accumulating merits and virtues or of paying my debts and, of course, needless to say, the mysteries of karma and the reincarnations of life. My soul, that is my consciousness, had been that of a human being. However, after that special incident, I knew where I came from, where I would go, and what my mission was. My life has become quite distinct and clear. My soul, that is my consciousness, first restored my memory of the thousand-year world, and I gradually took on the soul of a super celestial being from the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. Moth Orchid. One more question. I can enter into the non-material world in my dreams. Is there any way for me to let my consciousness enter into the non-material world freely when I am awake? Guide. Yes, by the method of being free from the mortal body in meditation. 生命不灭定律. The 5 Laws on the Eternity of Life. Xiefeng. November 13, 2005. Translated by Transin. Dr. Christopher Langton, the principal researcher at Los Alamos National Life Laboratory in the United States, said, "Life's essence lies not in its specific substance, but in its form." This means that life's essence has nothing to do with material, and it is just a form, a structure without material and a sign invisible to our naked eyes. Genes, the building blocks of life, seen as the human genome with scientific instruments, is actually not life's essence. but only the expression of a sealed book of life. This is why people can make spaceships, but not even make an ant. It is not completely right to say that the essence of life lies in its form because its form is just a rigid structure, but life itself is movable with spirituality and consciousness. Therefore, a life is a non-material structure with spirituality. At present, we must understand how these non-material structures with spirituality come into being and how they are born. If lives are material structures, then all the things produced by people such as bicycles, clothes, desks, toothbrushes, pencils, and so on are also lives. Obviously, lives are absolutely not material structures, but non-material structures, and therefore only those who understand the whole of non-material world can create them. For humans, creating the non-material structure is the hardest nut to crack, but for those who understand the non-material world, it is just a piece of cake. The problem is that life cannot be spiritual with only non-material structures because they must possess spirituality. However, where can we get the spirituality? For the masses, this is an easy question to answer. They will say, it comes naturally, or it originates from evolution. If you ask further, what is nature and how can it come naturally? Life is a non-material structure with spirituality, but how do they evolve by themselves? Those people, with shaking heads and angry eyes, would say, naturally means naturally, and evolution means to evolve step by step. If you go on further, they will become very impatient and say that we are taking unnecessary pains to study an insoluble question. You can visit http://www.lifechanyuan.com to search and browse my critical articles about the theory of evolution. Now, we have to ask the questions. What is the universe and why does it exist? In time and space of the universe, we learned that the universe exists as order and remains relatively stable with the total sum of negative and positive energy always equaling zero. What is this order used for? If we ask what political order is for, what is the purpose of the legal and administrative order established by people, the answer must be that it is a social order established with the aim of serving mankind. Then, what is the order of the universe used for? I have discussed this very clearly in different sections of Chanyuan Corpus and Siefeng Corpus. The universe is designed to serve life. If either perishes, then so will the other. Therefore, as long as the universe exists, life will continue. This is a basic law. Actually, though, the thing that concerns us is not the survival or extinction of the macroscopic life of the whole universe, but that of our individual lives. In other words, what we really care about is, am I going to die forever? This involves such problems as the structure of the universe, the balance of life, the morality of the universe, and others. So I have written some simple discussions about symmetry in nature, mysterious and great power, and the golden mean, perfect proportion. We know that the core of order is symmetry. The universe is orderly, so the universe is symmetrical, and the Taiji diagram is a vivid simile for this. We also understand that the universe is holographic, that one cell can reflect all styles and features. Therefore, we come to the conclusion that life is symmetrical. This symmetry is not only reflected in that of certain individual lives, but in all lives in the universe. From 36-dimensional space, we can see that the zero world, heaven world, Elysium world, cathode black hole body, the 10,000-year world, and the 1,000-year world are symmetric to the inflamed layer, frozen layer, hell world, plant world, animal world, and livestock world. The mortal world is at the exact interface of these two symmetrical worlds. In this way, the symmetry of the whole universal lives is formed, namely the simplified overall structure of life, heaven, the mortal world, and hell. The universe has universal morality. Once it is reflected in any individual life, it represents the evolution of that life, its transmigration and reincarnation. For example, if a person's consciousness and thinking resonates on the same frequency as the morality of the universe, then their life can evolve toward heaven, the 1,000-year world, 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world. Otherwise, their life will evolve toward hell, the hell world, inflamed layer, or the frozen layer. Of course, this is just a general version. For a specific individual life, the evolution of life is much more complex. Why is life allowed to evolve? The answer is to maintain the morality of the universe and the dynamic balance of the whole of life. When the amount of any kind of life becomes too large within a limited space, it will have breached its symmetry. That is, it will have exceeded its limit. Similarly, if the amount of a certain kind of life is too small, it will also have breached its symmetry. This is just as with an industrial corporation with hundreds of employees. Only one general manager is wanted, and a few division managers, a maximum of 50 sales and logistics personnel, and the highest number of employees should work on the front line. If there are 1 or 90 on the front line, more than 90 sales or logistical personnel, or more than 50 division managers, this corporation is certain to fail. In order to ensure the normal survival and development of any corporation, its allocation of personnel has to be symmetrical. Certainly, this symmetry focuses mainly on the energy aspect rather than the quantity. The symmetry must be movable and flexible, not rigid and stiff. This is like the Earth's allocation of water. Seas and oceans account for the vast majority at 97.24%, glaciers and icebergs are 2.14%, underground tunnels are 0.61%, and rivers and lakes are only 0.0001%. However, all this water has to keep on flowing and cycling through meteorological changes and the Earth movement.